Welcome back to the stage of gaming. I'm Extreme Raging here with Wanderlust Adventures. This is an assassin's guide. I'm going to be showing you how to do the most damage and produce the most efficient results with your assassin. Now, let's talk about the skills for a moment. Now, your basic attack, it's pretty simple. It does a simple little slash. However, it has backstabbing capabilities. One second, get back there. Now, what that means is when you get behind an enemy, you can deal massive amount of damage. Massive amount of damage. Especially with Death Strike that you can get later on. You do enhanced damage up to 2,000, depending on the mob. And it's quite impressive. However, of course, it does have the risk of actually going behind your enemy. So, keep that in mind. After that, we have this thing called Dodge and Block. Now, basically, it's pretty simple. You hold the button and you block. You get 2 hits by default. You can get more through equipment. Fighters have the skill to increase their block. But generally what you'll want to do is to dash through. Once you're doing your dashing animation, you'll be completely invulnerable to enemy attack. And you also do a little bit of damage. Early on the damage is sufficient for your needs, but later on the damage is pitiful. And it doesn't even proc on hit procs, meaning you can't even attack someone with your normal attack and catch them on fire, for example. It's not good for offensive. Mainly use it for defensive, you know. You can use it to get behind your enemy for a backstab quite easily. Here, I'll demonstrate it for you. Take a block, go right past. Now it does a lot of damage early on, but it lets you backstab enemies quite easily. Very, very useful. Make sure you master that. Do not neglect it. When you're leveling up, I'd recommend getting a couple points in toughness and then 1 in endurance. The reason for that is, you know, when you're first starting off, you don't have that many abilities, so you don't need SP for anything. However, once you're done leveling past to 4, you get your first ability, Inferno. I'd recommend Inferno first before all of them, because it does the most damage, and it has a lingering AoE effect, which is quite powerful. The lingering AoE effect will only affect one enemy one time. So if an enemy runs through multiple fires, they can't get damaged by it. And I believe that if they get hit by the initial blast, that also means that they won't be affected by the fire. So it's quite a powerful ability. I'll demonstrate it real quick. Even at a low level, it can do quite a lot of damage. I was wrong. The lingering effect does do more damage than the initial effect. It's quite interesting to note. So if you're being chased, you might want to drop it preemptively and run. You know, if you're only being chased by a few mobs, that is, and not by a lot of mobs. What I would recommend next, though, is Chill. This is a powerful utility, but also quite damaging potion. And it goes well with Inferno, because burning enemies automatically become frozen. Obviously, I'm too strong right now. Let me just, see, when they're frozen, it's very easy to go behind them and stab them in the butt. Very powerful for initiating stabbing in the butt tactics. And when they're on fire, they're automatically frozen. Very, very powerful. A frozen enemy is usually a dead enemy if an assassin is nearby. What I would recommend next after that, ignore Ninja Star. The damage it does is quite pitiful. However, in some cases, you can actually replace it for your normal attack because it does do backstab damage, but it'll deal lower DPS overall, and of course, consume SP, which is needed for your other abilities. Next, I'd recommend getting Vitality. Getting Vitality over Death Strike is kind of an interesting issue. I'd recommend only getting Vitality up a couple points, enough to cover for your health regeneration needs. At higher levels, the lingering effect lasts a little bit longer and it heals for up to 250 for a overall point of 1,250 points of health regeneration. So it can be quite powerful, and your allies can benefit from it as well. The cooldown is fairly long, so keep that in mind, at least in comparison with the other potions. Notice how fast the cooldown is for that. So I'd only recommend getting a couple points in that and putting a point into this as soon as you can. Death Strike will increase the amount of damage you do with your backstabbing. For example, I did 256 damage to this bear before, but now I do 404. Upgrade that a little bit more. Now I'm doing 993 damage. It's quite impressive how much damage you can do. After you level that up sufficiently, next I'd recommend is maximizing focus, or at least getting enough SP regeneration for your needs. Maximizing focus will ensure that your SP regeneration is very high, and you can spam potions quite... Oof, poor guy. And you can spam potions while dodging like crazy. Generally, at higher levels of play, you will be doing exactly these tactics. Running around, spamming potions, and backstabbing any freezing enemies that you can. Therefore, having enough SP to do those tactics successfully is quite important. Once you have enough SP regeneration, I would recommend Blast over Poison Blade, at least initially. Poison Blade is quite an interesting case, because poisoning enemies generally makes them weaker, but later on the only enemies that give you any trouble are the undead, or very strong enemies that are already immune to poison. Thus, getting Poison Blade is really just for, you know, fits and giggles. It's not really efficient to get. However, getting Blast is quite efficient. Blast uses the same method as Inferno and Chill, except it knocks back enemies and has a chance to stun once I find an enemy. Keep in mind, all these potions also include your add-on hit effects. That is, if you have an ice gem, you automatically freeze enemies. Or at least have a chance to freeze enemies with your attacks. And your potions also incorporate that as well. Blast Potion has the potential to do the most damage out of all potions, provided you get the enemy as close to the blast radius as possible. I'm not sure if it's the same for other potions. To me, it seems as though damage is just random, but the closer they are to the blast, the more damage it does. See that how that did 2,556 damage? Oof, that's brutal. However, you can see it does different amounts of damage based on the area of effect and how close they are. Or maybe it's just random. Hell if I know. Next, we have Stealth or Confusion. Confusion, that is a tool for only one need. It's for the undead that are immune to your poison, that are immune to your frost. And, you know, generally it's very powerful against those type of enemies, but it's very, very inconsistent. Sometimes it won't even affect the enemies, and sometimes they'll target you regardless. Therefore, initially, I'd recommend getting Stealth. Now, every level you get in Stealth increases how many attacks you get. At the first level of Stealth, you only get one attack. At 3, you can attack more than a couple times. Or you can only attack a couple times. See? My Stealth isn't broken. And it still isn't broken. But on the 3rd attack, it will be broken. And you'll be vulnerable to enemies. Now, you aren't immune to damage while in Stealth. The enemies just ignore you. So keep that in mind with your tactics. Now, these are the abilities I wouldn't recommend to get. After you get Stealth, I'd recommend maximizing Vitality and Focus. And after you do those, your core is done. However, we will go over Ninja Star, because I know some people love Ninja Stars. Now, it's quite fast and it does do backstab damage, but it doesn't do as much damage as your normal attacks. Unless you're backstabber, of course. And your melee backstab attacks are far, far more damaging. But of course, melee has the potential for you getting killed. So some people will actually use Shuriken. However, Shuriken usually runs out of SP quite fast. And while you're using it, you don't regenerate SP. Another thing to note, and it's quite interesting, is that you can mark enemies with your dash, which throws a shuriken at them automatically. What's also quite interesting is you can mark multiple enemies, and throw multiple ninja stars. So if there's multiple enemies, it might be beneficial to use this against a tough enemy mob and have them focus all the shurikens at that enemy mob. However, the mark doesn't seem to last long. In fact, it probably only lasts a couple seconds. But generally, ninja stars are a worthy investment if you're scared to getting hit, or if you're inexperienced at using your dodge and block abilities. Now, confusion, I want it to work, but it's just not powerful, and I'll demonstrate why. Obviously this is level 1, but I've actually noticed almost no change. So the confusion will go off, they'll target each other, but at lower difficulties they won't even damage each other much. And keep in mind, the only enemies that really give you trouble are enemies that confusion generally doesn't work at, aside from a few exceptions. Come on, come on. There we go. The cooldown is quite high too. See how I used confusion but it didn't even work? It's very inconsistent. The only reason... Oh, okay, well there it goes. Sometimes the enemies will target you regardless. It's quite annoying. Use it in conjunction with stealth. However, the problem is you'll run out of hotkeys to use it with. Therefore, I wouldn't recommend getting it at all. And Poison Blade generally has a low chance to proc. But it does proc occasionally, and when it does, it's quite nice. But like I said before, against mobs that are immune to it are the only ones that are only going to give you trouble. So generally I wouldn't recommend getting it. So now that you've seen all these abilities, I'm going to show you a final boss fight with this build that I have. And I hope you enjoy and I hope you learn from it. The boss battle is quite long, so keep that in mind. If you get bored, go ahead and exit out.